"You need milk for your daughter, and I need a husband urgently." Julian Thompson held his 3-month-old daughter tightly against his chest as he walked along the dirt road that cut through Oakwood Estate. Little Chloe had been crying non-stop for 2 hours, and he knew exactly why. The formula had run out the night before, and the nearest store was 25 miles away. That's when a woman came running toward him, jumping over the wooden fence that separated the property from the road. She wore a beige cap and work clothes, and her eyes showed the same desperation he felt. "Wait up!" she shouted, breathless. "You're Julian, right? The one who moved into Mr. Arthur Harrison's house last week?" He stopped, suspicious, adjusting the baby better in his arms. "That's me. What do you want?" "My name is Sarah Harrison. I own this ranch here," she said, pointing behind her. "Listen, I know your situation is tough. Everyone in town knows you lost your wife and are raising the baby alone." Julian felt his chest tighten. It still hurt to talk about Emily. 3.5 months since the complicated childbirth that took his wife, and he still didn't know how to deal with the pain. "And what does that have to do with you?" he asked somewhat harshly. "It has everything to do with it, because I have a proposal for you." Sarah took a deep breath. "I have fresh milk from the cows here at the ranch. I can give you as many gallons as you need for your daughter for free every day." Julian raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "In exchange for what?" "In exchange for you agreeing to marry me." The answer was so direct he almost stumbled. Chloe kept crying, and he swayed his body, trying to calm her. "Are you crazy? We don't even know each other." I know it seems crazy," Sarah spoke quickly. "But just listen. My grandfather passed away 2 months ago and left a clause in the will. If I don't get married in 15 days, the entire ranch goes to my cousins. They've had their eyes on the property for years." Julian looked around, seeing the vast green pastures and the cattle grazing peacefully. The ranch seemed well kept and prosperous. "That doesn't make sense. Why would your grandfather do something like that?" "Because he was from a time that thought a single woman couldn't handle business," Sarah sighed. "I'm 32, never married, and he was always on me about it. Thought I'd end up alone and childless. And why me? There are plenty of single men around." Sarah hesitated for a moment, looking at the baby who was still whimpering in his arms. "Because you need help as much as I do. I heard you have no family here, that you came from New York City running from the memories, and this child needs care, a stable home." Julian felt something stir inside him. It was true he was struggling to handle everything alone. Working at the town's accounting office and taking care of Chloe was proving harder than he'd imagined. "It wouldn't be a real marriage," Sarah continued, seeing he didn't answer. "It would just be on paper. You'd have your room, I'd have mine. The only thing I need is the document to prove to the lawyers I fulfilled the will. And after? After, we'll see. If living together works out, who knows? If it doesn't, we separate once I get the inheritance situation settled." Chloe wailed louder, and Julian felt desperation take over. He knew he didn't have much time before hunger left his daughter even weaker. "I need to think." "Of course I understand, but don't take too long, because the deadline is tight." Sarah pulled a crumpled paper from her pocket. "This is my phone number, and if you want, you can come here to the ranch to get to know it better before you decide." She turned to leave, but stopped and looked at him again. "Oh, and Julian? About the milk for your daughter. Even if you don't accept the proposal, you can come get what you need. A child isn't to blame for adult complications." Saying that, she jumped back over the fence and disappeared among the trees, leaving Julian standing in the middle of the road with 1,000 confused thoughts in his head. That night, he couldn't sleep. Chloe had finally settled down after he managed to buy milk in a neighboring town, but the conversation with Sarah kept echoing in his mind. A marriage of convenience. It was something he only saw in old movies, not something that happened in real life. But his life had become so unreal in the last few months that maybe this was just another strange situation he needed to face. Ever since Emily died, nothing made sense anyway. In the morning, he decided to visit the ranch. If nothing else, he would at least get to know the woman who had made that crazy proposal better. The property was even more impressive up close. The main house was large and well kept, painted white with blue details. There were 3 barns, organized corrals, and a small bridge over a creek that cut through the land. Sarah greeted him on the porch, wearing the same work clothes as the day before. "I didn't think you'd show up so early." "Neither did I." He smiled for the first time in weeks. "Can I see the place?" "Of course. Come on, let me show you." She guided him through the corrals, explaining about the different cattle breeds, the milking routine, and the challenges of farming. Julian was impressed with her knowledge of every aspect of the ranch. "Did you learn all this by yourself?" "My grandfather taught me from a young age. My parents died when I was 8 and he raised me. He always said I had to know everything because one day the ranch would be mine. Until he decided to put this crazy condition in the will." "Yeah," she laughed bitterly. "I guess in the end he thought I needed a man to complete me." Julian observed the way she spoke with the workers, how she knew each animal by name, how her eyes shone when she showed the expansion projects. It was clear that woman was born to be there. "Can I ask you a personal question?" "Sure." "Why did you never marry? I mean, for real?" Sarah stopped walking and stared at the horizon for a while. "I've had a few relationships, but when men found out I would inherit all this, they either became too interested in the property or were too intimidated by my independence. I never managed to find someone who wanted me exactly as I am. And you think I would be different? You have your own complications. You don't need mine to be happy." She looked at him directly. "And you seem like a decent man. That's already more than I can say about most I've met." They walked in silence until they reached the corral where the dairy cows were being milked. The sweet smell of fresh milk filled the air. "Can your daughter have cow's milk at this age?" "The pediatrician said I can mix it with formula for a gradual transition." Julian adjusted Chloe in the stroller he had brought. "It would be much better than the processed kind." "So you accept the proposal?" Julian took a deep breath. He looked at his daughter sleeping peacefully, then at the prosperous ranch facilities, and finally at Sarah. "I agree to try, but I want a few conditions." "Go on." "First, this is really just on paper. No pressure for it to become a real marriage. Second, if either of us wants out, they can leave without drama. Third, Chloe is my responsibility. You can help if you want, but the decisions about her are mine." "I agree to everything." Sarah extended her hand. "Deal." They shook hands, but Julian still felt he was committing the biggest madness of his life. The following days passed in a blur of documents, conversations with lawyers, and preparations. Julian discovered that Sarah's legal situation was even more complicated than she had initially told him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, her grandfathers will not only require the marriage but also stipulated that the husband needed to live on the property for at least 1 year for the inheritance to be valid. Furthermore, her cousins, led by a man named Gordon Harrison, had already hired a lawyer specializing in will disputes. "They will try to prove the marriage is a sham," explained Sarah's lawyer, Mr. Bennett. "You need to be prepared for intimate questions about your relationship." Julian felt a knot in his stomach. "What kind of questions?" "Details of your domestic routine, each other's personal preferences, stories that only a real couple would know." Sarah looked at him with concern. "We'll have to pretend we've known each other longer. Or you'll have to actually get to know each other," suggested Mr. Bennett. That's how Julian moved to the ranch 3 days before the wedding. He set up a small nursery in the guest room and tried to establish a routine with Chloe in the new environment. The first morning was strange. He woke up to the smell of coffee and bacon coming from the kitchen, something he hadn't smelled in months. When he went downstairs with Chloe in his arms, he found Sarah preparing a full breakfast. "You didn't have to." "I always cook for all the workers. 2 more people don't make a difference." She was lying, Julian realized. The table was set in a special way, with a new tablecloth and flowers from the garden in the center. It was clear she had made an effort. "Thank you." During breakfast, they talked about basic things. Julian told her about his work as an accountant in New York City, about how he met Emily in college, about the decision to move to a small town after the tragedy. Sarah talked about her childhood on the ranch, about the challenges of being one of the few female producers in the region, about the dreams she had for the coming years. "I want to expand milk production and start making artisanal cheeses," she said. "There's a market for that in the bigger cities." "Do you have a business plan?" "Sort of, in my head. If you want, I can help you organize it on paper. It's my area." Sarah smiled, and Julian noticed she had a dimple in her chin he hadn't seen before. "That would be great." Chloe started to fuss, and Julian got up to get her. "Let me try," said Sarah, holding out her arms. "Do you have experience with babies?" "No, but like everything in life, you learn by doing." Julian hesitated, but handed over his daughter. To his surprise, Chloe calmed down almost immediately in Sarah's arms. "How did you do that?" "I think she liked my energy." Sarah gently rocked the baby. "Or maybe she was just tired." Seeing the two of them together, Julian felt something strange in his chest. For months he hadn't seen Chloe so calm with another person. The wedding day arrived faster than anyone expected. It was a simple ceremony at the courthouse, with only Mr. Bennett and his secretary as witnesses. Sarah wore a light blue dress and Julian a borrowed suit. During the exchange of vows, he looked into her eyes and saw something he didn't expect: genuine nervousness. It wasn't just about the inheritance, he realized. She was actually nervous about marrying him. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," said the judge. "You may kiss the bride." Julian and Sarah looked at each other awkwardly. They hadn't planned this part. "Just a peck," she whispered. The kiss was quick and chaste, but when they pulled apart, Julian felt a slight dizziness he couldn't explain. Back at the estate, they were greeted by the staff with a small surprise party. Mrs. Martha, the cook, had prepared a simple but tasty cake. Sam, the foreman, brought a bottle of craft bourbon. "To the new couple's good fortune," he toasted. Julian felt like an imposter, but at the same time, there was something comforting about that welcoming environment. It had been a long time since he felt part of something. That night, after everyone had left and Chloe was asleep, he and Sarah sat on the porch to talk about the next steps. "So now what?" "Now we take it one day at a time," she replied. "Tomorrow is Monday, back to the normal routine. What if the cousins try something? We face it together." Julian looked at her under the yellow porch light. Sarah had taken off her dress and was back in her work clothes. She was barefoot with her hair down and seemed completely at ease. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Aren't you afraid you married a complete stranger?" Sarah gave a low laugh. "I'm very afraid. But sometimes you have to take a chance on people, right? And you have a young daughter. That says a lot about your character. Or about my irresponsibility. An irresponsible man doesn't move cities to give his child a better life, doesn't accept crazy deals just to make sure the child has food." Julian felt a tightness in his chest. Sarah had summed up exactly the fears he had carried for months. "Emily always said I had a tendency to sabotage myself," he murmured. Maybe she was right. Who was Emily, besides being Chloe's mother? Julian was silent for a while, looking at the starry sky. "She was a math teacher, the smartest person I ever knew. Always had a plan for everything, always knew the right answer. When she died, I kind of lost my way." "And how did you meet?" "In college, I was studying accounting, she was studying education. We met in the library, fighting over the same statistics book." Sarah smiled. "And who won?" "She did. She always won." Julian smiled too, but with sadness. She had this ability to get everything she wanted just by being herself. Never had to force anything. "And do you feel like you betrayed her memory by marrying me?" The question was direct and caught Julian off guard. "A little." "That's normal. But you did what you thought was best for your daughter. I'm sure she would understand." They were silent for a few more minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. "And you?" asked Julian. "Have you ever been in love?" "Once. About 5 years ago. He was an agronomist who came to do some work here in the region." "What happened?" "He was from Washington, D.C. I'm from here. When his work was done, he wanted me to leave with him." Sarah sighed. "I couldn't leave the estate, he couldn't stay. In the end, neither of us was willing to give up what was important." "Do you regret it?" Sometimes. But I think it was for the best. Relationships that start with one person sacrificing everything usually don't work out. Julian reflected on her words. There was a wisdom there that he didn't possess. I think I'll go to sleep, he said, standing up. Good night, Julian. Good night, Sarah. And thank you for everything. The first days as husband and wife were surreal in their normalcy. Julian established a routine of working in the town's accounting office in the mornings and helping on the estate in the afternoons. Sarah looked after Chloe when he was away, and the baby seemed to have adapted perfectly to the new environment. In the evenings after dinner, they would sit down to put the business plans on paper. Julian was impressed with Sarah's ideas for diversifying production. Have you thought about direct-to-consumer sales? He asked, examining the spreadsheets he had put together. How so? Organic farmers markets, home delivery, partnerships with restaurants. You can charge more by selling directly than by selling to middlemen. I never thought of that. It's the future. People in the city are increasingly concerned about where their food comes from. Fresh milk straight from the farm has a lot of appeal. Sarah looked at him with admiration. You really understand this. In New York City, I handled the accounting for several small rural producers. I learned a lot about the market. Why didn't you start your own business? Julian stopped writing and stared at the spreadsheet. Emily always thought it was too risky. She preferred the security of a steady job. And you? What did you prefer? I never thought much about it. I always let her decide that kind of thing. Sarah didn't comment, but Julian noticed the look of understanding she gave him. In the second week, the problems began. Julian was feeding Chloe her bottle when they heard cars approaching the house. Through the window, they saw two men in suits getting out of a black sedan. Who are they? Asked Julian. My cousin's lawyers, Sarah sighed. The time has come. They went down together. The older man introduced himself as Mr. Sterling, legal representative for Gordon Harrison. The younger one was an assistant who took notes on a clipboard. We are here for a preliminary investigation into the authenticity of this marriage, said Mr. Sterling. Investigation? Julian became irritated. By what right? By the right given to us by the suspicion of fraud against the estate. Marriages of convenience are illegal when used to circumvent wills. Sarah held Julian's arm, a gesture that seemed natural but was clearly strategic. You may ask your questions. For the next 2 hours they were subjected to a thorough interrogation. Questions about domestic habits, food preferences, sleep routines, intimate details of the relationship. Julian and Sarah did well on the basic questions, but there were moments of tension when the lawyer asked about the couple's sex life. That's very personal, protested Julian. Real couples have a sex life, Mr. Julian. Unless you have some special condition that justifies abstinence, Sarah intervened before he could answer. My husband is still grieving his first wife. We are building our intimacy gradually. The answer was perfect, and Julian admired her quick thinking. When the lawyers finally left, they sat down exhausted in the kitchen. How did you know how to answer those questions about me? Asked Julian. I pay attention. I know you drink coffee without sugar, that you prefer to sleep on your stomach, that you get nervous when someone checks their phone during a conversation. Wow, I don't notice those things about you. It's because you're still learning to be present, she said without malice, but you'll learn. That night, Julian couldn't sleep thinking about Sarah's words. Was it true that he didn't pay attention to the people around him? Emily always complained that he lived with his head in the clouds. The next day he decided to observe Sarah more closely. He noticed that she hummed when she was happy, that she always checked if the gate was locked before going to bed, that she had a habit of touching her hair when she was nervous. You're looking at me in a strange way, she commented during lunch, just trying to learn to pay attention. To me? To you, to Chloe, to life. I think I've spent the last few years on autopilot. Sarah smiled. And what have you discovered? That you're afraid of thunder, that you love coconut ice cream, and that you get worried when any animal on the ranch is sick. Impressive. Anything else? That you are much stronger than you let on, but that sometimes you feel alone. Sarah's smile softened. You're learning fast. During the third week, they received a visit from Gordon Harrison in person. He was a man in his 50s, well-dressed, with an air of superiority that irritated Julian immediately. "Dear cousin," he said, kissing Sarah's cheeks with exaggeration, "what a joy to hear about your marriage." "Thank you, Gordon. This is my husband, Julian." "A pleasure." Gordon shook Julian's hand with excessive force. "I heard you're an accountant." "That's right." "What a coincidence. You must understand a lot about asset management then." Gordon's tone held an insinuation that Julian didn't like at all. "I understand enough." "Great, great. Because you'll need that experience to help Sarah with the ranch. Poor thing, she's always struggled with numbers." Julian looked at Sarah, who was visibly irritated. "Actually, Sarah has excellent financial control. We're just organizing some expansion projects." "Expansion?" Gordon laughed with false cordiality. "Cousin, you've always been a dreamer. But anyway, I didn't come here to talk business." "Then what did you come for?" "I came to get to know my new cousin-in-law better, and of course to see how you're both adapting to married life." Gordon stayed for 2 more hours, asking seemingly casual but clearly investigative questions. He wanted to know how they met, how long they had dated, why they decided to marry so quickly. "It was love at first sight," said Sarah, taking Julian's hand. "Sometimes these things happen when we least expect them." "True," agreed Julian, squeezing her hand. "After Emily passed away, I thought I'd never be able to love anyone again. But Sarah changed everything. The lie came out so naturally he almost believed it himself. When Gordon finally left, they collapsed on the sofa. "He didn't believe a word," said Sarah. "No, and he'll be back with more questions. We need to improve our story, or create a version closer to the truth." Sarah looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "We could say we met by chance, that you helped me when I was in need, and that we discovered we have a lot in common. We don't need to invent a sweeping passion." "That would make more sense." They spent the rest of the afternoon creating a more plausible version of their relationship. During the process, Julian realized that many of the details they were inventing weren't so far from reality. It was true that Sarah had helped him when he needed it most. It was true they had discovered unexpected common ground. And it was true that he felt more comfortable with her than he had with anyone since losing Emily. That night, when Chloe finally fell asleep after a crying fit, Julian found Sarah on the porch looking at the sky. "May I sit?" "Of course." "What are you thinking about?" "About how life takes strange turns," she sighed. 3 weeks ago I was desperate, thinking I was going to lose everything. Today I have a husband, an adoptive daughter, and more hope for the ranch's future than I've had in years." "Adoptive daughter. That's how I see Chloe. I know you're her father, but she's become important to me too." Julian felt something shift in his chest. "She likes you a lot. She's always looking around for you when she wakes up. Babies are intuitive. They sense when they're loved." "And do you love her?" Sarah took a while to answer. "I do. More than I ever imagined I could love a child who isn't biologically mine." "Why?" "Because she needs me. Because when I look at her, I see a future, not just a past. And because she makes me feel like I can be a good mother, even though I never planned for it." Julian fell silent, processing her words. "Emily always wanted children," he said eventually. "She had it all planned out. How many we'd have, at what age, what their education would be like. When she found out she was pregnant, she was overjoyed. And you?" "I was terrified. I didn't know if I'd be a good father, if I could handle the responsibility. When Chloe was born, and Emily, when everything went wrong, I felt guilty, as if my fear had somehow caused the tragedy." "Julian, you know that doesn't make sense, right?" "I know. But feelings don't always make sense." Sarah reached out and touched his arm. "You're a wonderful father. Chloe is lucky to have you. Sometimes I don't feel that way. No father always feels that way. But you try. You're dedicated. You make sacrifices. That's what matters." They sat in silence for a few minutes, listening to the nighttime sounds of the ranch. "Sarah?" "Thank you for everything. for the opportunity, for your patience, for accepting Chloe into your life. Thank you for giving me a chance, for helping me with the ranch plans, for reminding me that not all men are the same." Julian looked at her, noticing how the moonlight highlighted her delicate features. "What do you mean?" "My experience with relationships hasn't been very good. I always ended up feeling like I had to choose between being myself and being loved. With you, for the first time, I can be exactly who I am, even though it's a fake marriage. Maybe it's fake on paper, but the friendship is real, the respect is real, and that's more than I had in many so-called real relationships." Julian felt something shift between them in that moment. He couldn't quite define what it was, but there was a new intimacy in their conversation. "I should go to bed," he said, standing up. "Of course. Good night." "Good night, Sarah." When he reached the bedroom, he stood for a while looking at the crib where Chloe slept peacefully. For the first time in months, he felt at peace. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it was something like hope. The next day, they received news that changed everything. Mr. Bennett called to say that Gordon had filed a lawsuit contesting the marriage. "He claims he has proof that you two never met before the reading of the will," the lawyer explained, "and that the marriage was specifically engineered to circumvent the testator's wishes." "What kind of proof?" asked Sarah, her voice tense. "Statements from people in town saying you never mentioned having a boyfriend. Hospital records showing Julian arrived in town alone. Documents proving you got married just 15 days after your first meeting." Julian felt his stomach drop. "And now? Now you need to prove the marriage is legitimate. The judge has scheduled a hearing for next week. You'll have to convince the court that you're truly in love." After hanging up the phone, they stared at each other in panic. "How are we supposed to convince a judge of something we don't even know ourselves is true?" asked Julian. "I don't know, but we're going to have to figure it out." The next few days were intense preparation. They rehearsed stories, memorized details about each other, created a romantic version of their relationship that was minimally believable. "You have to talk about how you fell in love with me," said Sarah during one rehearsal. "What do I say?" "I don't know. That you thought I was beautiful, smart, hard-working, that you were impressed with my dedication to the ranch." Julian looked at her, trying to find the right words. It wouldn't be a lie. "What?" "I really do think you're beautiful and smart and hard-working, and I am impressed with your dedication." Sarah blushed slightly. "Julian, it's true, from the first day I've admired you. The way you take care of everything here, how you don't give up, how you accept people as they are." "Stop." "Why?" "Because you're talking as if it were real." Julian stopped talking, realizing that perhaps that was exactly what was happening. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, the audience arrived faster than anyone expected. The forum was packed. It seemed like half the town had shown up to watch the fake marriage of the farm heiress trial. Julian was wearing the same borrowed suit from the wedding day, and Sarah had bought a new dress, simple but elegant. They sat side by side at the defendant's table, trying to appear as a loving couple under everyone's critical gaze. The prosecutor began by presenting the evidence against them. Testimonies from neighbors, shopkeepers, estate workers. They all said the same thing. They had never seen Julian and Sarah together before the wedding day. "Your Honor," said the prosecutor, "it's clear this is an elaborate sham to circumvent the will. The defendant arrived in town less than a month ago, a widower and desperate. The defendant was facing the deadline of the will. It's a coincidence that's far too suspicious." Mr. Bennett stood up for the defense. "Your Honor, true love doesn't follow a schedule. My clients met during a difficult time in both their lives and found solace in each other. The fact that the timing is tight doesn't invalidate the genuine feelings they developed." "Then let them prove those feelings," the prosecutor retorted. That's when the judge called Julian to testify. "Mr. Julian, can you explain to the court how you met your wife?" Julian took a deep breath, looking at Sarah before answering. "I was going through a very difficult time, Your Honor. I had lost my wife 3 months prior and was trying to raise my daughter alone in a new city. I was feeling completely lost. And how did Mrs. Sarah come into your life? She saw me walking past the estate with Chloe, who was crying because I didn't have any milk to give her. Sarah stopped everything she was doing to help me. That's not unusual. Neighbors help each other. That's true. But she didn't stop there. In the following days, she would always ask how Chloe was doing, if I needed anything. She never asked for anything in return. And when did you start dating? Julian hesitated. This was the hardest part of the story. It wasn't exactly dating, Your Honor. It was more of a natural evolution. We started talking every day. She helped me adapt to the town. I helped her with some estate projects. We realized we had a lot in common. And when did you decide to get married? When we discovered we couldn't imagine our lives apart. It was a half-truth, but when Julian said it while looking into Sarah's eyes, he realized it might be truer than he had imagined. The prosecutor wasted no time. Mr. Julian, don't you find it far too coincidental to meet a woman who urgently needed to get married exactly when you most needed help? I don't believe in coincidences, Counselor. I believe the right people come into our lives at the right time. Even if that person offered marriage at the first meeting. Julian sensed the trap, but decided to be honest. She didn't offer marriage, Counselor. She offered a proposal of convenience that could help us both. The marriage came later when we realized there was something real between us. The answer caused a murmur in the courtroom. Julian saw Sarah looking at him in surprise. So you admit it was initially an arrangement? I admit it started in an unconventional way, but many marriages start that way and become real over time. When it was Sarah's turn to testify, she was visibly nervous. Mrs. Sarah, can you explain why you offered marriage to a man you barely knew? Because I recognized in him something I rarely find, Your Honor. Decency, honesty, dedication to family. Those are qualities I value greatly. But you weren't making a romantic proposal to him, were you? Sarah hesitated, looking at Julian. Not initially. But sometimes love is born from the most unexpected situations. Are you saying you fell in love with him? I'm saying I learned to love him. The answer was so sincere that even the prosecutor seemed moved. And how do you know it's not just gratitude for him solving your inheritance problem? Because what I feel for him goes beyond gratitude. When he smiles at my daughter, at Chloe, when he listens to me talk about the ranch with genuine interest, when he makes me feel I can be myself without fear, that's not gratitude, it's love. Julian felt his heart race when she said, "My daughter." There was a protective possessiveness in Sarah's voice that was impossible to fake. The judge called for a recess to analyze the testimonies. During the break, Julian and Sarah stayed in the hallway trying to decipher the expressions of those present. "Do you think they believed it?" whispered Sarah. "I don't know, but you were very convincing." "Because I was being honest." Julian looked at her curiously. "Honest about what?" "About what I feel for you." Before he could answer, they were called back to the courtroom. The judge took long minutes organizing his papers before speaking. "This is an interesting case," he began. "On one hand, we have circumstantial evidence suggesting a marriage of convenience. On the other, we have testimonies demonstrating genuine affection between the spouses." Julian held Sarah's hand, feeling it tremble. Considering that the will in question has a clause many might consider antiquated and discriminatory, and considering that the defendants have demonstrated mutual commitment to raising the minor Chloe, this court rules. The pause seemed to last an eternity. That the marriage is valid and that the inheritance shall remain with Mrs. Sarah, now Mrs. Julian Thompson. The relief was so great that Sarah broke down in tears. Julian hugged her, and for the first time since they'd met, the gesture felt completely natural. When they left the courthouse, they were greeted by a small crowd of supporters, ranch workers, town merchants, neighbors who had witnessed Julian's dedication to the girl in recent weeks. "You deserve it," shouted Mrs. Martha, the cook. "So glad it all worked out," said Sam, the foreman. Back at the ranch, they had a small celebration. But when night fell and the guests left, a strange tension hung in the air. "And now?" asked Julian while giving Chloe a bath. What do you mean? We got what we wanted. You kept the inheritance, I got stability for Chloe. Theoretically, our obligation is over. Sarah was silent for a while, drying the dinner dishes. Do you want to leave? I don't know. I want to know what you want. I want us to stay together. Julian stopped drying Chloe and looked at her. Why? Because these past few days, when I spoke in court about loving you, I realized I wasn't lying. And because Chloe is happy here. And because you make me happy too. Julian finished dressing Chloe and put her in the crib before answering. Sarah, you don't have to say anything now. I just wanted you to know how I feel. No, I want to speak, he approached her. These last few days made me realize my feelings for you are real too. I'm not sure when it happened, but it did. Really. When you held Chloe's hand in court and called her your daughter, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. I felt like we belonged together. Sarah smiled with tears in her eyes. And now? Now we stop pretending and start living for real. They kissed, and this time, it wasn't a formal peck. It was a real kiss, full of feelings that had grown little by little during those intense weeks. The following months were about adapting to the new reality. Julian officially moved into the main bedroom, and they began to live as a real couple. It wasn't an easy transition. Both had to learn to share space, decisions, and responsibilities. Their first fights were over silly things. Julian thought Sarah worked too much. She thought he was too protective of Chloe. He wanted to organize everything in spreadsheets. She preferred to handle things more intuitively. You don't trust my way of doing things, Sarah complained during an argument about the milking schedule. It's not a lack of trust. It's an attempt at optimization. I've been running this ranch for over 10 years, Julian. I don't need optimization. Every business can be improved, and every husband can learn not to try to fix his wife. It was the first time she had called him her husband outside of an official situation, and the first time she had called herself his wife. The impact of the word made them stop arguing immediately. I'm sorry, he said. You're right. I'm trying to control everything because I still feel insecure here. Insecure how? Like I'm an intruder in your life. Like I don't deserve to be here. Sarah moved closer to him. Julian, you're not an intruder. You're my husband, my daughter's father, my partner in this business. You have as much right to be here as I do. Even though I ended up here by chance. It wasn't by chance. It was because it's where you needed to be. These conversations became routine for them. They learned to talk about insecurities, fears, expectations. They learned that a real marriage required much more work than a paper marriage. Chloe, now 6 months old, developed quickly in the ranch environment. She was a curious and smiling baby who loved the animals and seemed to have a special connection with Sarah. She calls me Mama, Sarah told Julian, beaming. How does that make you feel? Like my heart is going to explode with happiness. Julian smiled, looking at the woman who had become so important in his and his daughter's life. She's lucky to have 2 mothers who love her. 2? You and Emily. You'll both always be part of her life. Sarah kissed him softly. I like it when you talk about Emily. It means you're not trying to erase the past to live in the present. I learned from you that we can honor what was and still build something new. During the first year of their real marriage, they faced several challenges. Pests in the crops, problems with suppliers, Julian's adaptation to full-time ranch work. He had quit his job at the accounting firm to dedicate himself completely to the ranch. It was a risky decision, but it made sense considering the expansion plans they had developed together. Are you sure? Sarah asked when he announced the decision. It's a secure job. Security is an illusion. I'd rather bet on what we can build together. It was one of the first important decisions he made without consulting spreadsheets or doing extensive analysis. It was a decision from the heart. The expansion of their Kraft cheese production was a success beyond expectations. Julian used his contacts from New York City to secure clients in big cities, and Sarah perfected the recipes until she created products unique to the region. We should think about registering a brand, Julian suggested during a planning meeting. What name do you suggest? How about Hope Valley Ranch? Why? Because this is where I learned to have hope again, and because it was hope that brought us into each other's lives. Sarah approved the name, and Hope Valley Ranch became a recognized brand, not only in the region but throughout the state. With the growth of the business, they hired more employees and began thinking about new projects. Julian suggested agritourism. Sarah wanted to invest in solar energy. "We can do both," he said. "They're not mutually exclusive projects. But they require high investments. Then we do one at a time, with patience and planning." That was the dynamic that had been established between them. Julian brought organization and strategic vision. Sarah brought intuition and practical knowledge. Together they formed a balanced partnership. On their second wedding anniversary, they threw a bigger party with relatives Julian hadn't seen in years and Sarah's friends from various stages of her life. "I've never seen you so happy," said Sarah's cousin, observing the couple during the party. "Because I've never been so happy," she replied, looking at Julian, who was playing with Chloe in his arms. "He's very different from the other boyfriends you had." "In what sense?" "He sees you. He really sees you, and he likes what he sees." Sarah smiled, realizing her cousin had perfectly summarized what made that relationship work. During the party, Julian gave an impromptu speech that moved everyone present. "When I arrived here 2 years ago, I was broken. Not just financially, but emotionally too. I thought my life had ended along with Emily's. Sarah taught me that we can honor the past and still build a new future. She taught me that family isn't just blood, it's a choice. And every day I choose her, just as she chooses me." Sarah cried throughout the speech, and when he finished, she stood up to respond. "Julian taught me that true love isn't what we see in movies. It's not overwhelming passion or intense drama. It's partnership. It's choosing to stay when things get tough. It's growing together instead of growing apart. It's waking up every day and deciding that what we've built is worth working for." The guests gave a standing ovation, and Chloe, now a 2.5-year-old child, ran to hug both parents at once. That night, after everyone had left and Chloe was asleep, Julian and Sarah sat on the same porch where they had first talked as husband and wife on paper. "Do you regret anything?" he asked. "Taking so long to find you," she replied without hesitation. "And you? Spending so long thinking I didn't deserve to be happy again." They sat in silence, looking at the starry sky that had witnessed so many important conversations between them. "Julian? I want to have another child. Your child. Our child." Julian turned to her, surprised. "Really?" "Very much so. Chloe needs a brother or sister, and I want to experience a pregnancy. I want to go through it with you." "Are you sure? It's not just because you think I want it. It's because I want it. For the first time in my life, I really want to be someone's biological mother." Julian kissed her tenderly. "Then let's try." 9 months later, Leo was born, a chubby, smiling baby who was the spitting image of his father. Chloe, now 3 years old, was enchanted with her brother and appointed herself the parents' official helper. "Mommy, Leo is hungry," she announced during a routine visit to the pediatrician. "How do you know?" "Because he's making that face I used to make when I was a baby." The doctor laughed at the girl's perceptiveness. "She's going to be a great big sister." During the postpartum period, Sarah went through difficult moments. The baby blues hit hard and she felt inadequate as a mother. "What if I don't know how to take care of him properly?" she cried. "With Chloe it was different. She was already big when she arrived." "You are a wonderful mother," Julian comforted her. "Look how happy and well cared for Chloe is. Leo will be the same." "But a newborn is different. What if I do something wrong?" "Then we learn together." No one is born knowing how to be a father or mother. It was a difficult phase, but one that brought them even closer together. Julian took on more responsibilities at the estate, so Sarah could dedicate herself to caring for Leo, and gradually she gained confidence. When Leo turned 6 months old, Sarah finally admitted she was feeling more secure in her motherhood. "I think the problem was that I was trying to be perfect," she said. "When I accepted that I can make mistakes and still be a good mother, everything became easier." "Did you figure that out on your own?" No. I learned by watching how you raise Chloe. You're not a perfect father, but you're a present and dedicated father, and that's much more important. With 2 children, the family dynamic changed completely. Mornings were rushed, nights were interrupted, weekends were dedicated to family activities. Chloe started attending school in the city and made a point of telling everyone she had a baby brother and parents who loved each other very much. The teacher asked if you're my real father, she said to Julian one day. And what did you say? That you're my father from the heart, and that's better than a real father because you chose me. Julian felt his eyes well up at his daughter's answer. And you're right. I choose you every day. I choose you too, Daddy. During their 3rd year of marriage, they faced their first real relationship crisis. The estate was growing too fast, and the responsibilities began to overwhelm them both. Julian was working 16 hours a day, trying to handle all the administrative demands. Sarah was exhausted with production and caring for Leo, who still woke up several times during the night. We haven't talked properly in weeks, Sarah complained during an argument about schedules. I know, but it's a phase. When the business stabilizes, it will get better. And if it doesn't get better, what if we become a couple that only argues about work and logistics? That won't happen. How can you be so sure? Julian stopped what he was doing and looked at her intently. Because I won't let it. We built a family, Sarah. I'm not going to sacrifice that for money. That's when they decided to hire an administrative manager to share the responsibilities. Julian realized he was repeating the same mistake of trying to control everything alone. We need help, he admitted, and there's no shame in that. They hired David, an experienced farm administrator, who significantly lightened Julian's workload. With more free time, he could dedicate himself better to his family and also start new personal projects. What do you want to do? Sarah asked when he mentioned having time for hobbies. I want to learn to play the guitar. I want to teach Chloe math. I want to read more books. I want to have time to talk with you without discussing work. Those are simple things. The best things in life are simple. They instituted the rule that Sundays were sacred. No work, just family. It was the day to take the children out, cook together, and talk about dreams and personal plans. What do you want to teach Leo when he grows up? Julian asked during one of these Sundays. I want to teach him that he can be sensitive and strong at the same time, that crying isn't weakness, that asking for help is brave, that love is always the right choice. And for Chloe, I want to teach her that she can be anything she wants, that she doesn't need to make herself small to make others feel comfortable, that her opinion matters. And you? What do you still want to learn? Sarah thought for a moment. I want to learn not to be afraid to dream big. I've always been very practical, very down to earth. But you taught me that sometimes it's worth taking a risk. And what would dreaming big be for you? Turning Hope Valley Ranch into a model of sustainable agriculture. I want other producers to come here and learn. I want us to be a reference not only in quality, but also in environmental responsibility. Julian smiled, seeing her eyes light up as she spoke of her dreams. Then let's work for that. Even though it's an expensive and risky dream, especially because it's a dream worth having. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That's how, in their 4th year of marriage, they began the farm's most ambitious project, the transformation to completely sustainable agriculture, solar energy, composting system, rainwater harvesting, crop rotation. The initial investment was high, and there were moments when Julian questioned if they were being reckless. What if it fails? He asked during a meeting with the bank manager. What if it succeeds? Sarah replied. We can't always live in fear of failure. The project took 2 years to complete, but the result exceeded all expectations. Hope Valley Ranch became the first property in the region certified as 100% sustainable. They began receiving visits from students, other producers, researchers. Julian created a consulting program, and Sarah started giving lectures at universities. Who would have thought the girl who was afraid of public speaking would become a sought-after speaker? Julian teased. Who would have thought the spreadsheet accountant would become a visionary of sustainable agriculture? she retorted. Chloe, now 7 years old, was proud to tell her friends that her parents were famous for taking care of nature. Leo, at 3 years old, was already showing interest in the animals and plants. "Daddy, why are the cows happy here?" he asked during one of the guided tours. "Because we take good care of them," explained Julian. "When you take good care of someone, that person becomes happy. And do you take good care of Mommy?" "I do, and she takes good care of me too." "Is that why you're happy?" "That's one of many reasons." On their 5th wedding anniversary, they decided to have a different celebration. Instead of a party, they organized an open house day at the ranch for the community. "We want to share our happiness with those who helped us get here," Sarah explained to the local press. More than 300 people showed up: neighbors, current and former employees, suppliers, clients, friends from all eras. During the event, Julian and Sarah walked hand in hand, watching the children run among the animals, the adults chatting animatedly, the elderly sharing stories on the porch. "What do you think your grandfather would think of all this?" asked Julian. "I think he would be proud, not just of the ranch, but of the family we've built. Even though it's unconventional, especially because it's unconventional, we've proven that love has no formula." During the closing speech, Julian surprised everyone by announcing some news. "Sarah and I have decided we want to contribute even more to our community. Therefore, we are creating a foundation to teach sustainable agriculture to young people in the region." The news was met with enthusiastic applause. Several parents approached afterward to enroll their children in the program. "You didn't tell me about the foundation," whispered Sarah. "I wanted it to be a surprise. Are you on board?" "Of course I'm on board, but next time, include me in the planning, you control freak." They laughed, and Julian realized how much he had changed since the early days on the ranch. Before, he planned everything obsessively out of fear of losing control. Now, he made surprises because he trusted they could face any challenge together. The foundation became a beloved project for both of them. Every Saturday, teenagers aged 14 to 18 would come to learn about agriculture, the environment, and rural entrepreneurship. Chloe, even though she was only 7, loved helping as her parents' assistant. Leo preferred playing with the animals, while the big teenagers studied. "Daddy, when I grow up, can I work here too?" asked Chloe. "You can work wherever you want, my love. Here, somewhere else, in whatever makes you happy." "And if I want to be a farmer like Mommy? Then we'll teach you everything you want to learn." "And if I want to be something else? Then we'll support you in any choice." "And will you two stay married until I grow up?" Julian and Sarah looked at each other and smiled. "We'll stay married until you grow up, until your children grow up, until we get very old," said Sarah. "How can you be so sure?" "Because we choose each other every day," explained Julian. "It's not luck or fate, it's a choice." "And will you always choose me too?" "Always," they both answered together. During their 6th year of marriage, they faced a new challenge: Chloe's adolescence. Even though she was only 9, she was already showing signs of pre-adolescence and questioned many things. "Why can't I stay up later? Why do I have to eat vegetables if Leo doesn't? Why can you drink wine and I can't?" Julian and Sarah had to learn to navigate these questions without compromising their authority or stifling their daughter's natural curiosity. "She's testing boundaries," Sarah explained to Julian after a particularly difficult discussion. "It's normal at this age." "I know. I just didn't expect it to be so exhausting. We'll figure it out together. Neither of us got an instruction manual for raising a teenager." They decided to be more transparent with Chloe about the reasons behind the rules, instead of simply imposing authority. "Why do you think there's a bedtime?" Sarah asked during a conversation. "I don't know, because you say so." "No, because your body needs rest to grow up healthy, and because when you don't sleep well, you get cranky the next day." "And why do I have to help with the household chores?" "Because you're part of this family. We all contribute to make the house run well." Gradually, Chloe began to understand that the rules weren't arbitrary punishments, but rather a structure to help her develop well. Leo, on the other hand, was in the phase of endless whys. Why is the sky blue? Why do cows make milk? Why did you get married? Why does my sister get mad sometimes? Julian and Sarah had fun trying to answer all his questions in an age-appropriate way. Why do I have two parents if some friends only have one? Leo asked one afternoon. Because families are different, explained Sarah. Some kids have a mum and a dad. Others have just a mum or just a dad. Others have two dads or two mums. Others live with their grandparents. What matters is that it's a family full of love. And does our family have a lot of love? Our family has love to spare, said Julian, picking up his son. During this period, Julian and Sarah also had to deal with practical questions about the future of the ranch. With the growth of the business, there were purchase proposals, partnership offers, and invitations to franchise the model. It's tempting, Julian admitted when they received a multi-million-dollar offer from a large agribusiness company. But it's not what we want, right? Said Sarah. No. We built this to be ours, for our family, for our community, not to become just another business in a corporation. Even if it meant total financial security for our children will have something better than money. They'll have the example that it's possible to build a life based on values, not just profit. They declined the offer and continued growing organically, maintaining total control over decisions. On their 7th wedding anniversary, Sarah made a surprise proposal to Julian. I want us to renew our vows. Why? Because when we got married the first time, it was somewhat forced by circumstances. I want a ceremony that represents who we are today. And who are we today? We are two people who truly chose each other, who built a beautiful family, a thriving business, a life with purpose. Julian smiled. When do you want to do it? At the same place where we had our civil ceremony, but this time with all our family and friends. The vow renewal took place on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The ceremony was at the estate itself, under a yellow magnolia tree they had planted together in their first year of marriage. Chloe was the maid of honor. Leo was the ring bearer. Mr. Bennett officiated. Mrs. Martha made the cake. Sam organized the chairs. The entire community that had followed their journey was present. Julian, said Sarah during the vows, 7 years ago you came into my life when I needed it most, but only today do I understand it wasn't a coincidence. You appeared because it was where you also needed to be. Thank you for agreeing to build a life with me. Thank you for being a wonderful father to our children. Thank you for teaching me that true love is partnership, trust, and the courage to grow together. Sarah, Julian replied, you saved me, not only by offering a practical solution to my problems, but by showing me I could still be happy. You taught me that honoring the past doesn't mean being stuck in it, that it's possible to love again differently but just as deeply. Thank you for accepting Chloe as your daughter. Thank you for giving me Leo. Thank you for building with me not just an estate, but a home. When they kissed after the vows, the guests gave a standing ovation. Chloe and Leo ran to hug their parents, and the photo of that moment became one of the family's most cherished. During the party, several people gave moving speeches. Sam spoke about how Julian's arrival had transformed not only Sarah, but the entire dynamic of the estate. Mrs. Martha talked about how beautiful it was to see the family's evolution over the years. You are proof that family isn't just blood, she said. It's choice, dedication, love every day. One of the most emotional moments was when David, the administrative manager, spoke about the impact Julian and Sarah had had on the local community. You didn't just build a successful business. You showed that it's possible to make money without exploiting people or the environment. You inspire other producers to do things differently. Gordon, the cousin who had tried to contest the marriage, surprised everyone by appearing at the end of the party to apologize. I was wrong, he said to Sarah. You truly love each other, and you've built something beautiful together. I'm sorry for doubting you. Thank you for coming, she replied generously. It's never too late for a fresh start. That night, after everyone had left and the children were asleep, Julian and Sarah sat on the porch, the same place where they'd had so many important conversations over the years. How do you feel? He asked. Fulfilled, complete, grateful. Any regrets? Only that I didn't meet you sooner. I like the timing. We met when we were ready for each other. True, if we had met 10 years ago, maybe it wouldn't have worked. Why? Because I was still trying to prove I didn't need anyone, and you were still learning to make your own decisions. Julian reflected on her words. And now? Now I know that not needing someone is different from not wanting someone. And you know you can make decisions and still listen to advice. We've grown a lot together, and we still have a lot of growing ahead of us. What kind of growing? Do we want more children? Do we want to expand the ranch more? Do we want to move when the kids are grown? And you? What do you want? I want a few more years enjoying the little kids. Then I want to travel more with you. I want to see other ranches around the world. I want to learn more about sustainable agriculture. And I want to keep building this here with you. I want to see Chloe and Leo grow up here, but I also want them to see the world. I want our foundation to help hundreds of young people. Those are beautiful dreams. And achievable ones. They fell silent for a few minutes, listening to the sounds of the ranch that had become so familiar. Julian, I love you. I love you too. These weren't words they said automatically. Even after 7 years together, they still carried weight and meaning. In their 8th year of marriage, they faced the family's first serious health problem. Leo developed severe pneumonia that required hospitalization. Everything's going to be okay, Julian tried to reassure Sarah as they waited in the hospital corridor. What if it's not? What if we lose him? We're not going to lose him. He's strong, he has good doctors, and we're here with him. Chloe, now 10 years old, showed impressive maturity during the crisis. She helped take care of the house, organized her own clothes for school, and even made sandwiches for her parents to take to the hospital. Chloe, you don't have to be a grown-up, said Sarah. It's normal to be worried about your brother. I know, but if I help you, you can take better care of Leo. After 5 days in the hospital, Leo made a full recovery. But the experience left a mark on the whole family. We never know how much time we have, Julian reflected. We need to make better use of the ordinary days. How so? Less time working, more time playing. Less worry about things that don't matter, more attention to what really matters. They implemented changes to their routine. Dinners without phones, Saturday mornings in bed talking, drives with no specific destination. Daddy, you're more fun, Leo observed when he got home. Yeah? How so? You laugh more, and you play with me more. Julian realized his son was right. The worry over the illness had taught him to value the simple moments. During this time, Chloe began to show interest in learning more about Emily, her biological mother. Can you tell me more things about her? She asked one night. Julian and Sarah looked at each other. They knew this moment would come, but they still felt unprepared. What do you want to know? What was she like? What did she like? How did you meet? Julian spent the next hour telling stories about Emily, how she sang in the shower, how she made lists for everything, how she loved romantic comedy movies. She seemed nice, said Chloe. She was very nice, and she would be very proud of the young lady you've become. Can I visit her grave? Sarah held Julian's hand under the table. Of course you can. We can go next weekend. Can Mama Sarah come too? If she wants to. Of course I want to, said Sarah. Emily made you, and you are one of the most important people in my life. The visit to the cemetery was emotional but necessary. Chloe brought flowers and a letter she had written. What did you write? Asked Julian. I thanked her for making me, for choosing you as my dad, and for going to heaven at the right time so Mama Sarah could take care of me. Julian cried reading the letter. Sarah was also moved by her daughter's maturity. You don't have to thank her for that, he said. Having you is the best gift I've ever received, and I got 2 mothers, said Chloe. One who made me and one who raised me. I'm very lucky. From that conversation on, Emily became a more natural presence in the family, not as a shadow from the past, but as part of the story that had made everything possible. In their 9th year of marriage, they received national recognition for their sustainable farming work. Julian was invited to speak at the National Congress about agricultural policies. Are you going? Asked Sarah. Only if you come with me. But I'll be nervous speaking to so many important people. You are more important than anyone who will be there, and you have more practical knowledge than most of the theorists. They went together to Washington, D.C., leaving the children with Mrs. Martha. It was the first trip for just the two of them since the honeymoon they never had. "We should do this more often," said Julian during the flight. "Travel? Time just for us. We dedicate ourselves so much to the children and the estate that we sometimes forget to be a couple. That's true, but it's also normal at this stage of life. Even so, we need to take care of our relationship." In Washington, D.C., they were treated like celebrities of agribusiness. Journalists wanted to interview them, other producers wanted to learn their techniques, politicians wanted photos. "This is a bit surreal," whispered Sarah during a cocktail reception. "A little. But it shows that our work has real impact." The lecture was a success. Julian spoke about the economic aspects of sustainable agriculture, Sarah about the practical implementation. Together, they presented a model that seemed replicable and viable. "You inspire hope," said a congressman after the presentation. "You show it's possible to do things differently." Back at the estate, they found Chloe and Leo excited to tell all about the adventures they had had with Mrs. Martha. "She taught us how to make brigadeira," said Leo. "And she let me feed the chickens all by myself," added Chloe. "Sounds like you had fun," said Julian. "Yes, but we missed you," said Chloe. "The house feels strange when you're not here." "We missed you too," said Sarah, hugging them both. That night, after putting the children to bed, Julian and Sarah talked about the trip. "I liked seeing us function in new situations," he said. "How so?" "We complement each other well. You brought technical credibility, I brought presentation organization. We work well together." "We've always worked well together." "That's true. From the beginning." "Do you think that's why it worked out between us?" "I think it worked because we want the same things: family, purpose, peace. And because we don't try to change each other." "That too. We kind of complete each other without canceling each other out." During their 10th year of marriage, they faced an important decision. A major university had proposed turning the estate into a research center with multi-million-dollar investments. "It would be a unique opportunity," said the dean during the meeting. "You would keep the property, but we would have laboratories, students, researchers. The estate would become a world reference." It was a tempting proposal, but one that would completely change the family dynamic. "We need to think," said Julian. "Of course, but don't take too long. The opportunity is time-limited." During the following weeks, they weighed the pros and cons. The money would solve all future financial worries. The scientific recognition would be unmatched, but the family's privacy would be compromised. "What do you think?" they asked their children. Chloe, now 12, was direct. "I like our life the way it is. I don't want a bunch of strangers living here." Leo, 6 years old, was simpler. "Will the cows still be here?" "They will." "Then it's okay." But it was Mrs. Martha who gave the wisest advice. "You already have everything you need: love, health, purpose, stability. Why complicate things?" Julian and Sarah realized she was right. "We're going to decline," Sarah told the dean. "May I ask why?" "Because our happiness is not for sale," replied Julian. After communicating the decision, they felt relieved. "Did we make the right choice?" asked Sarah. "We made our choice, and that's what matters." That year, they implemented their most personal project yet, a responsible adoption program for abandoned animals. The ranch became a temporary home for dogs and cats that needed care before permanent adoption. "It was the children's idea," Sarah explained to a local journalist. "They wanted to help animals that didn't have a family, like Chloe didn't have before coming here." The program was a success, and within a few months they had found homes for more than 50 animals. "We're turning into a zoo," Julian joked, watching Leo play with 3 puppies at once. "A zoo full of love," corrected Sarah. During the 11th year, Chloe truly entered adolescence, bringing new challenges for the family. "I hate living in the middle of nowhere," she shouted after an argument about going to a party in the city. "You don't hate it," Julian said calmly. "You're frustrated because you can't do what you want." "It's the same thing." "It's not, and you know it." There were months of negotiations, tested limits, tears and reconciliations. Julian and Sarah had to learn to balance protection with freedom. "She just wants to be normal," Sarah said after a particularly difficult conversation with their daughter. "And what is normal for a teenager? Going out with friends, going to parties, having more independence. We can give her those things without compromising her safety." They began allowing Chloe to spend weekends at friends' houses in the city, under specific conditions. It was a middle ground that worked for everyone. "Thank you for trusting me," she said after the first authorized overnight stay. "We will always trust you," said Sarah, "even when you're mad at us." During this period, Leo began to show an interest in music. Julian, who had learned guitar as promised, began teaching him. "Daddy, you play well," the boy said during one of the lessons. "Thank you, but you have more natural talent than I do." "How do you know?" "Because you have a musical ear. You can reproduce melodies just by listening." "Can I have real lessons?" "Of course, if that's what you want." Leo started guitar lessons in the city, and within a few months he was already playing simple songs. His first family recitals became beloved events at the ranch. "Where did he inherit this ability from?" asked Sarah. "Emily played the piano," Julian recalled. "Maybe it's genetic. Or maybe it's just a gift." During their 12th year of marriage, they received unexpected news. Sarah was pregnant again. "How did this happen?" she asked, still in shock from the test result. "I think you know how," Julian joked. "It wasn't planned. The best things in life aren't planned. We already have 2 children, Julian. I'm 43. Chloe is a teenager. Leo needs attention. And we'll handle 1 more." "How can you be so sure?" "Because we've handled everything so far, and because this baby will be born into a structured family, full of love." The pregnancy was more difficult than the previous one. Sarah had intense morning sickness, and Julian took on even more responsibilities at home and on the ranch. "I feel useless," she complained during the 2nd trimester. "You're creating a life. There's nothing more useful than that." "But I'm not helping with anything." "You're helping with the most important thing." Chloe and Leo reacted differently to the news. "Another sibling?" said Leo, excited. "Can I teach him guitar?" "Ugh, a crying baby," sighed Chloe. "There goes my piece." "Hey, you were a baby once too," reminded Julian. "And you loved me anyway." She smiled despite the complaint. During the pregnancy, they had to renovate the house again. Leo's room became the boys' room, and they set up a new nursery. "It feels like yesterday we set up Chloe's first nursery," said Julian, helping to paint the walls. "Yesterday? That was over 10 years ago." Time flies when you're happy. Maya was born on a cold June morning, after a calmer delivery than the previous ones. She was a small but healthy baby, with curious eyes and a calm temperament. "She looks like me when I was a baby," said Sarah, looking at the old photos. "She's perfect," said Julian, enchanted with his newborn daughter. Chloe, despite her initial complaints, fell in love with her sister. "Can I hold her?" she asked every day. Leo created a special song for Maya, which he played whenever she cried. "Music soothes babies," he explained seriously. Maya's arrival brought a new dynamic to the family. Sarah had to learn to divide her attention between 3 children of very different ages, and Julian discovered that being a father in his 40s was different from being a father in his 30s. "We're more relaxed this time," he observed. "How so?" "We don't panic over every sneeze, every cry, every change in routine. Experience helps." "That's true, and the other 2 help too. We're a real family now." "Weren't we before?" "We were. But now we're a family we built together from scratch." During their 13th year of marriage, with Maya still little, they faced one of their most difficult moments. The ranch went through a financial crisis due to a pest that destroyed a large part of the harvest. "We're going to have to cut costs drastically," said David during an emergency meeting. "How drastically?" asked Sarah. "Maybe let some employees go, cancel expansion projects, reduce investments in the foundation." Julian and Sarah looked at each other, knowing these decisions would affect not only them, but the entire community that depended on the ranch. "Let's review everything before making any decision," said Julian. During the following weeks, they worked day and night analyzing alternatives. Julian used all his experience as an accountant to find ways to save without letting anyone go. What if we renegotiate with suppliers? What if we postpone buying new equipment? What if we use the emergency reserves? Gradually, they found a path that would preserve jobs and maintain essential projects. We're going to have a few tight months, Sarah explained to the employees, but no one will be let go. The relief on everyone's faces was evident. Sam, who had worked at the ranch for over 20 years, was moved. "You're the best bosses I've ever had." "We're not bosses," said Julian. "We're a family working together." The crisis lasted 6 months, but it strengthened the bonds between everyone even more. Employees offered to work overtime without additional pay. Neighbors lent equipment, clients advanced payments. "We cultivated more than products," Sarah reflected when the situation stabilized. "We cultivated relationships, and that's worth more than any profit." During this difficult period, the children also showed understanding and maturity. Chloe, now 15, got a part-time job at a store in the city to help with personal expenses. "You don't have to work," said Julian. "I want to help. We're a family, right?" Leo, 9 years old, started taking care of Maya so his parents could dedicate more time to the ranch crisis. "Leo, you're very responsible for your age," praised Sarah. "I learned from you that family helps each other." In the 14th year of marriage, the estate had not only recovered from the crisis, but was stronger than ever. The experience had taught valuable lessons about risk management and relationships. "We should do something special to celebrate," suggested Julian. "Like what?" "A family trip. Visit other estates, other cultures, other forms of agriculture." "With 3 kids? Why not? Chloe is old enough to appreciate it. Leo loves adventures and Maya travels well." They planned a 1-month trip through Europe, visiting organic farms and rural cooperatives. It was the first big family adventure. "Daddy, look how cool," exclaimed Leo with each new discovery. "Mom, can I take a picture to show my friends?" Chloe would constantly ask. Maya, at 2 years old, adapted surprisingly well to the changes in environment. "She's a natural-born traveler," observed Sarah. The trip was transformative for everyone. They learned about different models of sustainable agriculture, made friends all over the world, and realized the values they cultivated on the estate were universal. "What impressed you the most?" Julian asked Chloe on the flight back. "How farming families are similar everywhere. Everyone working together, caring for the land, wanting to leave something better for their children. And you, Leo?" "I liked seeing that there are kids just like me in every country, who like music and animals." "And you, Sarah?" "I liked realizing we're on the right path, that what we've built here has real value." Back in the US, they implemented several ideas they had learned on the trip. New composting methods, different irrigation techniques, innovative ways of engaging with the community. "This trip was an investment," said Julian. "We came back better than we left." During the 15th year of marriage, the time came to make an important decision about Chloe's future. She had been accepted to an excellent university in New York City, but that would mean leaving the family and the estate. "I don't know if I want to go," she said during a family conversation. "Why not?" asked Sarah. "Because you are my family. The estate is my home. I'm afraid of losing that." Julian remembered similar conversations he had had with Emily years before about change and growth. "Manu, you will never lose us, no matter where you are." "But things will change." "They will, and that's good. Change is growth." "What if I don't adjust to the big city?" "Then you come back. This will always be your home," said Sarah. "What if I adjust too well and don't want to come back?" "Then we'll root for your happiness wherever it is." Chloe decided to go to university, and the farewell was emotional for the whole family. "Take good care of your siblings," she said to Leo. "You take good care of yourself," he replied, crying. "I'm going to miss everything. The animals, the mornings on the porch, the conversations in the kitchen." "And we're going to miss you," said Julian. "But we'll keep talking every day." With Chloe at university, the family dynamic changed again. Leo took on more responsibilities as the present older brother, and Maya began to show her own personality. "Daddy, can I learn to drive the tractor?" asked Leo. "You're 12. Sam said when he was my age he already drove. Those were different times, but you can start with the four-wheeler. Maya, at 3 years old, was already showing interest in the estate and the animals. "Mummy, why do chickens lay eggs?" "To have babies." "Then why do we eat the eggs?" "Because not all eggs turn into babies." Maya's questions were constant and complex, making Julian and Sarah reflect on explanations they took for granted. "She's going to be a scientist," prophesied Sarah. "Or a philosopher," suggested Julian. That year they also faced a new reality: Mrs. Martha's aging. At 75, she began to show signs that she needed fewer responsibilities. "Mrs. Martha, would you like to reduce your workload?" Sarah asked delicately. "I don't want to stop. I just want less rushing around." "Then let's hire someone to help you." "As long as you don't move my kitchen." They hired a young assistant for Mrs. Martha, but she remained the heart of the home, especially during family meals. In their 16th year of marriage, Chloe came home for the holidays with news: a boyfriend. "Dad, Mom, I want you to meet Ethan," she said nervously. Ethan was a nice young man, an agronomy student, who showed genuine interest in the ranch. "How do you manage to balance sustainability with profit?" he asked during dinner. "With long-term planning," Julian replied, "and with the philosophy that profit without responsibility isn't sustainable." "And with a lot of hard work," Sarah added. Julian and Sarah were impressed with the maturity of Chloe's relationship. "He seems like a good guy," Julian said after they went for a walk. "He does. And she seems happy." "It's still early to think about marriage, right?" "Julian, she's 19. But it seems like just yesterday she arrived here at 3 months old. Time really does fly. Before you know it, Leo will be dating. Maya will be in school. We're not getting old, are we?" "We are, but together." During Chloe's vacation, they had several deep conversations about the future. "Do you want me to come back to work on the ranch after college?" she asked. "We want you to do what makes you happy," said Sarah. "But if I want to come back, is there a place for me?" "There will always be a place for you here, whether to work, to live, or just to visit." "What if I bring Ethan?" "If he makes you happy and respects our family, he'll be welcome." Leo, now 13, was entering adolescence with a completely different approach than his sister. "He's more laid back," observed Sarah, "or he just shows rebellion differently." "How so?" "He questions things intellectually. He wants to understand the why before accepting or refusing." It was true. Leo rarely talked back or threw tantrums, but he always asked the reason for rules and suggested alternatives. "Why do I have to make my bed if I'm going to mess it up tonight? Why can't I use my phone during meals if you guys sometimes use yours? Why do I need to study math if I'm going to work in agriculture?" Julian and Sarah had to get better at explaining their decisions and acknowledging when they didn't make sense. "He forces us to be better parents," said Julian, "and more conscious people." Maya, at 4 years old, was in the why phase more intensely than Leo had been. Why is the sky blue? Why do plants need water? Why did you get married? Why can't I have a pet unicorn? Her questions were a mix of legitimate scientific curiosity and pure childish imagination. "She has a very active mind," observed her preschool teacher. "Sometimes too active," laughed Sarah. "She's a very intelligent child. You need to encourage that curiosity." Julian and Sarah began including Maya in more educational activities on the ranch, explaining simple processes and letting her help with tasks. During the 17th year, they received an unexpected proposal. A television channel wanted to make a documentary about the family and the ranch. "It would be interesting to show how it's possible to be successful without compromising your values," the producer explained. "But we want privacy for our children," said Sarah. "Of course, we can focus more on the professional and community aspects." After much debate, they agreed to participate, on the condition that they would have editorial control over the content involving the children. The filming lasted 3 months and was an interesting experience. Seeing the family routine through the camera lenses made Julian and Sarah realize things about themselves they hadn't noticed before. "We really do work well together," observed Sarah, watching the footage, "and the children are more mature than we think. Leo especially. He talks about sustainability like an expert." and Maya already shows natural leadership. When the documentary aired, it had a national impact. They received hundreds of messages from people inspired by the family's story and values. "You showed me it's possible," wrote one woman. "I'm going to start my own organic garden. I want to raise my children with the values you demonstrate," said a father. "Thank you for proving that true love exists," commented a young woman. The response brought new opportunities: speaking invitations, book proposals, educational partnerships. "Do we want to accept any of these opportunities?" asked Julian. "Only the ones that allow us to continue being who we are." They carefully selected opportunities that aligned with their values and didn't compromise family time. In their 18th year of marriage, Chloe graduated from university and announced her decision. She wanted to return to the ranch and work on expanding the educational activities. "Are you sure about this?" asked Julian. "New York City offers many opportunities." "I'm sure. I want to apply what I learned here, where I learned the most important values." "And what about Ethan?" "He wants to come with me. He's already talked to you about working here too." Chloe's return brought new energy to the ranch. She arrived full of ideas about precision agriculture, digital marketing, and social sustainability. "We can create an internship program for college students," she suggested. "We can partner with urban schools for educational visits. We can develop craft products that other rural families can produce and sell through our brand." Julian and Sarah were impressed with the business vision she had developed. "You learned a lot at university," said Sarah. "I did, but the values I learned here." Ethan integrated naturally into the family and the ranch. He was a hard-working, respectful young man, clearly in love with Chloe. "He's good for her," observed Julian, "and she's good for him. They complement each other well." Leo, now 15, was excelling in school and in music. He had formed a small band with classmates and played at local events. "He has real talent," said the music teacher, "and the discipline to develop that talent." Maya, at 5, was beginning to show an interest in science. She conducted experiments in the garden, collected insects to observe, and asked complex questions about biology. "She's going to be a researcher," prophesied Chloe. "Or an inventor," suggested Leo. "Or she'll discover a new career that doesn't even exist yet," said Julian. In their 19th year of marriage, they faced a significant change. Mrs. Martha decided to retire completely. "It's time," she said. "I want to enjoy my grandchildren in peace." The farewell was emotional. Mrs. Martha had been more than an employee. She was part of the family. "You will always have a home here," said Sarah, crying. "And you will always have a place in my heart," she replied. Replacing Mrs. Martha seemed impossible, but they found a young cook named Anna who, under the guidance of Mrs. Martha herself for a few weeks, learned not only the recipes but also the importance of her role in the family dynamic. "The kitchen is the heart of the home," Mrs. Martha taught Anna. "You're not just making food, you're making happy moments." During that year, Chloe and Ethan announced their engagement. "We want to get married here at the ranch," said Chloe. "In the same place where you renewed your vows." "Of course," said Julian, moved. "It would be an honor. And we want a simple ceremony just with family and close friends." "Whatever you want," said Sarah. The wedding was set for the following year, and the preparations became a family project. Leo composed a special song for the ceremony. Maya insisted on being the flower girl. Julian and Ethan planned the necessary renovations to the outdoor area. "It's going to be beautiful," said Chloe, watching the plans take shape. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Julian and Sarah decided to celebrate in a special way, a big party for the entire community that had followed their journey. 20 years, said Julian during the preparations. Who would have thought? 20 years of a lot of good things, replied Sarah, and some bad things too. The bad things made the good ones even better. The party took place on a sunny autumn afternoon. Not only neighbors and current employees attended, but also people from every phase of their lives. Mrs. Martha came with her whole family, former employees brought their children, clients became friends. During his speech, Julian summed up the 20 years of marriage. When we got married, it was a practical arrangement between two people who needed help. Today, it's a partnership between two people who choose to be together every day. We built not just a family, but a community. Not just a business, but a purpose, Sarah added. Julian taught me that it's possible to start over without denying the past, that family is a choice, not just biology, that true love is daily work, not just a feeling, and all of you here today are part of this story. Chloe also spoke, representing the children. My parents taught me that home isn't a place, it's a feeling, that family is built with patience, respect, and a lot of love, that it's possible to succeed without compromising values, and that the best stories begin when we least expect them. The party lasted until dawn, with music, dancing, and many stories shared. It was perfect, said Sarah, when they were finally alone on the porch, like everything we've built together. What do you think the next 20 years hold for us? I don't know, but I know we'll face them together, whatever they are. They stayed silent for a while, listening to the last sounds of the party and looking at the stars that had witnessed so many important conversations over the years. Julian? Thank you. For what? For going along with this crazy idea with me, for building this life with me, for still choosing me every day. Thank you. For saving me when I needed it most. For teaching me to be a father, a husband, and a better man. For giving me a real family. They kissed softly, a kiss full of history, gratitude, and the silent promise of 20 more years ahead. The next day, life returned to normal. Leo fed the animals, Maya helped Anna in the kitchen, Chloe and Ethan worked on the expansion projects, Julian and Sarah reviewed the plans for the next quarter. But there was something different in the air, a feeling of fullness, of a complete cycle, of a story well told. We did it, said Sarah during lunch. Did what? Asked Leo. Built something worthwhile, a happy family, a thriving business, a united community. And now? Asked Maya. Now we keep taking care of all this. And we cherish each day. Julian looked around the table, Chloe and Ethan talking about wedding plans, Leo scribbling new melodies on the napkin, Maya asking questions about the flowers she had picked from the garden, Sarah mentally organizing the afternoon's appointments. It was a simple and perfect scene, exactly the kind of life he never imagined could be possible when he arrived at that ranch 20 years earlier, desperate and alone with a 3-month-old baby, now surrounded by love, purpose, and abundance in all the forms that truly mattered. Julian understood that sometimes the best stories begin with the most unlikely proposals. And sometimes, when you need milk for your daughter and someone needs a husband urgently, the universe simply conspires for two people to find exactly what they didn't even know they were looking for. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Julian and Sarah made the right decisions? We would love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.